Hi, everyone. This is Lesley Handa. I'm a board member of the Friends of Famosa Slough, and my talk today is the birds at Famosa Slough, the past and future. So before we get started, I wanted to provide some context to Famosa Slough. San Diego, where Famosa Slough is located, is in the middle of the Pacific Flyway, which is a migratory path for the birds. Since we are along the coastline, we may get interesting migrants as birds use the coastline to navigate migration. Additionally, most of the state of California is recognized as a biodiversity hotspot called the California Floristic Province. To qualify as a biodiversity hotspot, a region must have at least 1,500 endemic vascular plants and less than 30% of its original natural vegetation. There are 36 areas worldwide that comprise 2.5% of the Earth that host 43% of bird, mammal, reptile, and amphibian endemic species. Famosa Slough is also the southern end of Bahia Falsa or False Bay, which is a historic wetland. Globally, Famosa Slough is a globally recognized important bird area designated by National Audubon in the United States and BirdLife International worldwide. These sites are selected as they support significant bird populations, breeding or migration, and are vital to help maintain our bird biodiversity worldwide. Famosa Slough is not only recognized as a California Marine Protected Area, or an MPA, which is designated coastal regions that facilitate habitat recovery and boost biodiversity, but as of 2025, the International Union for Conservation of Nature recognized our state marine protected areas, or MPAs, on the global IUCN Green List and conservation areas, which acts as a gold standard for high quality conservation. The IUCN is the world's largest and most diverse environmental network, established in 1948 as a democratic union of government and civil society organizations. It serves as the leading global authority on the status of the natural world, providing data, assessments, and policy guidance to drive conservation and sustainable development. Locally, in the city of San Diego, Famosa Slough is also identified as a multiple habitat planning area, with these areas preserved, designated to protect 85 and more species and create a permanent ecosystem covering core biological resources, areas, and corridors. Next, I'd like to discuss bird conservation concerns for Famosa Slough and for birds worldwide. Bird populations have been declining, and in North America, there are 3 billion birds less than the 1970s, according to the groundbreaking study by Rosenberg et al. In 2019. Looking at the chart on the left, I'd like to draw attention to the red arrow number 1. Underneath red arrow number 1 of the groups of the species that have declined since the 1970s. So we have American sparrows, wood warblers, blackbirds, old world sparrows, larks, finches, swallows, swifts, flycatchers, starlings, and thrushes. And we will be revisiting these categories of birds later. Under the red arrow number 2, also note the declines for shorebirds, landbirds, waterbirds that indicate declines since the 1970s. On the right shows information from the 2025 State of the Birds report that indicate declines in airland birds, like birds that use the chaparral upland habitat of the slough, shorebirds that use the tidal wetlands, and decline of the light-footed ridgeways rail at the slough. Overall, declining population trends are not good, and we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to support the birds that use the slough. Would also like to highlight two concerns for birds at the slough and worldwide, with climate change being a major obstacle for the survival for many bird species. Climate change is the biggest threat to wildlife as all habitats are vulnerable to changes. These changes in resources may cause shift in how species respond, and we may see changes in phenology or timing of resources and how birds use the resources, and possibly range shifts. Unfortunately, species responses to climate change are unpredictable, so we need to do our best to prepare the resources to provide birds with the stability needed to face challenges for their survival for their species. The other major concern that we have to address are the numerous human impacts. As Famosa Slough is in an urban area, we need to work hard to address these impacts to make it easier on birds. Impacts include habitat loss and degradation, pesticide use, as pesticide use reduces insect abundance, which is the basis of our food chain and provides food for a lot of our insectivorous birds. Recreational disturbances can cause additional stress if birds flush from in response to some sort of disturbance. Lighting impacts disrupt natural behaviors. Window collisions kill 1 billion birds a year in the United States. Outdoor cats kill 2.4 billion birds a year in the United States. Vehicle collisions kill 2 million birds a year in the United States. So we have a lot of impacts to address. So evaluating the changes of the bird species at Famosa Slough over time to kind of understand how things have changed since 1988, which is the earliest bird list that I was able to find for Famosa Slough. There were 151 species originally on the list in 1988. In 2026, there are 261 species documented at Famosa Slough. It's incredible as there have been an increase in 110 new species since 1988. So this is the list of the 151 bird species documented in 1988 and that are still around in 2026. And these are the 6 species that were identified on the past list in 1988. And there's no records of these bird species in eBird at Famosa Slough. So with the exception of the barred sandpiper, which was marked as a rare sighting, these other species may have been seen more regularly in 1988. And with the inception of eBird in 2002, no records for these species exist at Famosa Slough. So this is the list of the 110 species documented at Famosa Slough since 1988. And as this list is a little bit overwhelming, here's a summary by eBird category of the increase in species. And then to further summarize it, I created a graph by eBird category showing an increase in the numbers of species. So overall, we've seen an increase in different waterbird species: ducks, herons, ibis, shorebirds, gulls, terns, rails, grebes. Skimmers is not on there, but they started appearing at the slough. Cormorants and pelicans. We've also seen an increase in perching birds, New World sparrows, warblers, blackbirds, grosbeaks, vireos, flycatchers, thrushes, wrens, corvids, and in raptors, hawks, falcons, and other birds, swallows, flycatchers, and woodpeckers. So tying this back to bird conservation, I evaluated multiple sources so that we could understand which species are vulnerable and have downward population trends that we need to be tracking. It's important to evaluate multiple sources that provide conservation designations, as the federal and state conservation designations do not provide enough perspective to which species are doing poorly or may be declining. Federal and state conservation designations of threatened and endangered a lot of times are the last-ditch efforts to save a species from going extinct. And to address bird conservation concerns, we need more information. So for this analysis, I use the IUCN Red List, which is an authoritative source identifying and tracking populations of animals worldwide. For North America, I referred to the 2025 State of the Birds report. For the United States, I added federal and state conservation designations, threatened and endangered species. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Birds of Conservation Concern lists from 2024, California Birds of Conservation Concern, working groups, Shorebird of Conservation Concern from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service from 2016, and locally, City of San Diego Multiple Species Conservation Plan, to name a few of the sources. So here is the summary of how many species are identified under these conservation designations. The bottom line is that we have a lot of species to protect at Famosa Slough. So I was able to identify 106 bird species that have some sort of conservation designation at Famosa Slough. And this kind of summarizes by category. I forgot to mention earlier, also added state special animals list for California and state fully protected list for California. So as you can see, this is a lot of species that we need to be protecting and planning for their future at Famosa Slough. So moving forward, we want Famosa Slough to continue supporting the high biodiversity of bird species it currently supports, and our goal needs to be to provide birds with high quality habitat to rest, forage, and breed undisturbed. We've done a great job for the past 40 years in many ways to support Famosa Slough. So current day, we've protected and expanded conservation areas and conserved areas, right? So we've purchased and restored native habitat on the Friends property, and we're making plans to eventually expand Famosa Slough, the Famosa Slough property, by giving those properties back to the Famosa Slough area. We've maintained high habitat quality with the hours and hours and hours of work, parties, and individual contributions of maintaining native vegetation and reducing non-native vegetation. The Friends of Famosa Slough board wants to thank everyone that has pitched in over the years of putting efforts towards helping to maintain a high quality habitat at Famosa Slough. We've reduced human impacts, right? So Jim and many others have spent countless hours picking up trash daily at the slough because the trash accumulates daily at the slough. And we've had numerous slough projects to address water runoff issues throughout Famosa Slough. We've established baseline data to track and monitor change and resolve issues at the slough. So with the creation and implementation of the Famosa Slough Enhancement Plan, we have identified, areas that we need to improve, and we have addressed most of the projects in the Famosa Slough Enhancement Plan. Every month, we document the bird biodiversity with the Famosa Slough monthly bird walks that are on the third Saturday of each month. And all of that data is recorded in eBird, right? And then that goes into the data that is publicly accessible and for the historic record at the slough. We also have, we're a top 5 San Diego eBird hotspot for birding. So we have a lot of the public participating in, efforts to document bird species at the slough. We participate and encourage different events to record data in iNaturalist, whether it's ad hoc data collection when we're doing restoration work at the slough or on some of the biodiversity days, to record more of that natural resources data at the slough. Currently, the Society for Conservation GIS San Diego chapter is working on a GIS data project to work on documenting historic and current day information for Famosa Slough so that we have a record of what's going on at Famosa Slough and some of our historic information at the slough. And for future plans, along with continuing what we are currently doing for Famosa Slough, we need to do the following. So one of the main things that we should be focusing on is to proactively plan for climate resiliency at the slough. So we need to work on creating a climate resiliency study to address the tidal wetland loss with sea level rise. With all of the different bird species that use the tidal wetlands and depend on the slough for that habitat, it's crucial that we address sea level rise and make sure that we have proper plans in place to implement to prepare the habitat for the future, to make sure it's around for future generations of birds. We also need to continue maintaining high quality habitat. Along with what we're currently doing, we should be, continuing to reduce harmful land management practices, encouraging other people and, especially folks that live around Famosa Slough to reduce pesticide use and prevent erosion at the slough. And we also need to reduce human impacts and some of the things that we still need to tackle at Famosa Slough. And this goes for everywhere, not just at the slough. Eliminate water pollution and reduce pesticide use. Reduce lighting impacts. Reduce bird collisions. Reduce non-native mammal predation at the slough, especially with the outdoor cat problem at the slough, because this is probably impacting a lot of the birds that visit Famosa Slough, and reducing human disturbance at the slough. So this concludes my presentation. I want to thank everybody who has pitched in to help support the slough, whether it's been, attending the bird walks at Famosa Slough to help record the species, or just enjoying nature and the birds and other wildlife at the slough. Or if you've pitched in with the work parties at the slough, we really appreciate your engagement in our community, and helping to make Famosa Slough what it is today. And I hope that all of you will continue to work with us and help make Famosa Slough the best that it possibly can be in the future for birds and the entire community. Thank you.